Hey, this is Dorian Day, and welcome to Serum in Depth number 19. Today we're going to be going over how to process single-cycle waveforms in Serum. 2 videos ago, we went over all the ways to import them, and there's some crossover between the two. So once you already have them in, like let's say I just drag one, how can you change this? Well, you can change it in 3 ways. You can change it by editing it in the waveform editor, changing it using the additive synth engine, or using the menu. And that's what we're going to be going over in this video. So let's just start over. So I'm going to start by drawing a flat tool, flat bar, and go over and see what we have. Normalize. So let's see what Normalize is going to do. Well, Normalize is nothing because there's no amplitude information. But as soon as we draw in this mini saw wave at the end and hit Normalize, what do we see? We see it jump to the top. I'm going to start over and do that again. So flatten. Hit Normalize. Jumps to the top. Normalize brings the highest peak in the audio file to 0 decibels. So to see that in comparison, if we reset, draw this line. So what if I draw this one 2 down and then this one 1 up? What's going to happen when we normalize? So what happens is it brings the highest peak, which in this case was in the negative direction, all the way down, and it increases every other peak by that much as well. So it brought these up by 2 squares. It brings this up by 2 squares. We can see with a more complicated waveform. Lowering the volume. That kind of lowers the volume. That's just weird stuff that we'll go over in another video. So Normalize, boom, brings up the highest peaks. Pretty simple. Next, remove DC offset. Well, what's DC offset? Without an audio class, DC offset is when you have voltage information at 0 hertz, and it's bad for audio engineering. When you see it on a graph, it basically, or on a like an oscilloscope or a waveform, it looks like a line that's just at the start or somewhere in your waveform that's above the 0 phase crossing. You can Google DC offset. Hopefully there's a quick picture. So you can see here. This bottom one's perfectly on the line. This top one is up above. It eats up your headroom. It can change the tone of the quality. It affects different things. So let's see, remove DC offset. Boom, it takes that line away. And if we have maybe something slightly more complicated, like that, DC offset brings it down. Not quite perfectly, but close. You can also remove DC offset yourself by just drawing a line right there. Flip vertical. It's pretty much that simple. Just flipping the top to the bottom. It's also phase invert. It's not just flipping it vertically. It has an audio property, which is phase inversion. Flip horizontal. Same deal, but horizontally. Shift to horizontal 0 crossing is a little hard to visualize. I suspect I know what's going on. But pretty much what it does is every time you click it, it takes you to some part of the waveform where the right edge will meet up with the left edge. I've tried to watch and predict this, and I haven't succeeded at it. But that's what it's doing. I think it should happen more often than it does, but who knows how it's calculating it, or I'm looking at it wrong. Initialize, set it all to 0, the same as this first bar. Okay. Fade edges. see about this. Okay, fade edges, grid size. So basically it fades the left and right to zero crossing based on the grid size. So if we had higher grid size, undo first. You can see it's sharper. It still stays as high. It doesn't like dip down. We can duplicate this. Insert at current index. So weird. Insert at current index. Cool. Now it, I think, is now it's duplicated there finally. Okay. So let's increase the grid size here. Single fade edges grid size. So when you have a more higher grid size, you get more of a peak. Undo. Okay, fade, crossfade, basically just makes them meet on the left and right by drawing a curve. There, let's see about this. Smooth, it like reforms the wave so that they'll meet smoothly in sort of like a parabola type situation. Filter, it's like a low pass filter. If you increase the grid size, it's pretty imprecise, unfortunately. You pretty much only have a couple grid settings that work. I'm sure there's some reason behind this that I'm just not understanding, but you can't change the grid size a whole bunch of times and expect different filter settings. Sample redux at grid pretty much just bit crushes your sound at the grid size. So if I open up basic shapes and get the saw wave, sample redux, you can see there's a really fine change. Undo, increase, decrease. No, increase. Also pretty precise. I've had some trouble trying to get this to work predictably. So yeah, as you increase size, as you increase the fine depth aspect of the grid, you get a more coarse bit reduction. So smaller grid or bigger grid, smaller number here, you get more filtering. Higher number, more bit crushing. And that finishes out the menu. Thanks.